Hello, my name is Tabitha Tripp. I'm the owner of Tender Hearts Home Health Care, and thank you for joining us for Navigating the Way for Seniors. We have been doing a series on healthy aging and the different foods that we can incorporate into our bodies so that we can age nice and healthy. And today we're finishing up our 6-week series, and it's going to be on bone health today. And of course, when you think about bone health, you think about milk products and breakfast foods and things of that nature. And I have with us again Kim Ferreira. Hi.
Hello.
Again, Kim. So nice to have you back.
I know, I love it.
Kim is the dietitian with Coastline Elderly Services in New Bedford. So why is bone health such a concern?
Well, you may know someone who has osteoporosis. I'd be surprised if you didn't, just because of the statistics. They say 1 in every 2 women over the age of 50 has osteoporosis, and 1 in every 4 men have osteoporosis. So that's pretty big numbers.
What exactly is, for the viewers that don't know, I mean, most of us, know a little bit about it, but can you kind of go in depth and kind of explain a little bit more about what osteoporosis is?
What osteoporosis is it's the weakening of our bones. Our bones, the minerals out of those bones are being depleted and the bone becomes fragile. So if you take a look at a healthy bone, there's a lot of white matter. It almost looks like a sponge. There's a lot of white matter, that's the bone material, and there's little specks, there's little holes, okay? When we have a weakening of the bone in osteoporosis, those holes get bigger. So what essentially happens, that white mass, that bone mass, becomes smaller. So that makes our bones extremely fragile and extremely susceptible to breaks. So instead of having a fall and just getting back up, if you have osteoporosis, that fall can lead to a break, which can lead to, a number of things. An unfortunate statistic is that 20% of seniors who have a hip break within a year pass away. That's a scary, scary statistic. So it's really important that we keep those bones as healthy as we can.
And I know we had that we had a graphic go up on the screen just a moment ago as we were talking about it, and it was really interesting to see, like you said, all of that white matter look like a nice little sponge.
Absolutely.
And then when you look at the other side, the person that has the osteoporosis, you look at that brown matter thinking that's something, but it's not. It's an actual hole where the bone is gone.
Right, because the minerals have been depleted. And if we're not getting the amount of nutrients that we need in a day, in which we'll get into, our body needs that. Our body needs calcium every day. Our body needs those nutrients to do other things in the body. And, after the age of 30, our bone plates essentially close. So our bones are going to be as strong as they can be up into our late 20s.
So that's going to put us at risk, age.
Absolutely, because if we're not doing what we can in terms of getting those nutrients in, our body kind of knocks on our bones and says, hey, you're not getting enough calcium. I need some of that. And when it, over time, when those minerals are being depleted, that's where you're seeing it literally being depleted.
What else makes a person at risk for osteoporosis?
Well, like we said, age. So if you're over the age of 65, that increases your risk. Unfortunately, women tend to be more susceptible. If you're a smoker, if you don't do a lot of activity, so if you're not putting weight on those bones to keep those strong, that will increase your risk, as well as if you're underweight. Believe it or not, being underweight is a major risk. And of course, family history. If you've had family history, then it's really important to take a look. And also, if you've had a break, if you're over the age of 50 and you've already had a broken bone, a lot of times that's the first sign, because osteoporosis is considered a silent disease. You don't hurt, you don't feel achy. So many people don't really know they have it until they've had a fall or they've had a break.
And a lot of times, too, when you think about exercising, you think about, a senior, exercising so their muscles don't atrophy, keep their muscles nice and strong. But it's also, like you said, for the bone
Absolutely.
health also.
It's also to keep those bones.
Not just for the muscles.
Yep. It's great for the muscles to keep the muscles strong. It's also great to keep the bones strong.
And what are the best ways to be tested for
Well, you can get a bone scan density test, which is super easy to do. You know, you just go, you lay down and you go through essentially a scan, and you get a little printout to be able to have an idea of what your bones look like. So, you know, especially if you're over the age of 50, it'd definitely be important to talk to your doctor to see if you can get this done. And
so that would be the age to definitely at least start having these.
Yeah, 50. In the 50s and 60s is when we've seen the largest loss of bone. So when you start to get into the 50s and well into your 60s, it's important to at least see where you're at.
How often should you have a bone density test?
You know, that's something you'd want to check with your doctor because depending on what those results are, you might have to get checked yearly. Earlier rather than later. So it would depend on, I think, where you're at.
Okay, now we're going to get into, like, as every show, the food aspect of what are some of the foods that we can eat for our bone health.
Well, calcium is the big nutrient that we really have to make sure we're getting enough of. So up until the age of 50, I should say 18 to 50, because in our adolescent years we need a little bit more. But from 18 to 50, we need about 1,000 milligrams. And then 50 and older, we actually need a little bit more. We need 1,200 milligrams of calcium a day. What would that be? Most of us think of milk. Most of it's in our dairy products. So, you know, I brought in yogurt. So instead of having all these other dairy products, I also wanted to show some other foods, especially if you're not into dairy, or a large portion of our population is lactose intolerant.
Right. My son-in-law is.
So that makes it challenging to get in that calcium. You obviously can consume things like soy milk and almond milk or rice milk. Those will be fortified with calcium. And some other foods that I wanted to bring attention. Remember, they're not going to be as rich in calcium as, say, a yogurt. How do you know how much calcium is in there? Well, if you take a look at the food label, calcium should be on there. And it's going to have a percentage. So just add a 0 to that and you'll know that's the amount of milligrams. So for instance, this yogurt says 40%. So you know there's 400 milligrams of calcium for a 1 container of yogurt. So it's an easy way to know.
I didn't know that. So you add a 0 to the percentage and that gives you the amount of calcium.
It makes it a little easier.
Sure.
So some other sources that people, you know, consumers may not be aware of is broccoli. Broccoli and the green leafy vegetables have calcium in it. Again, not very much, but still some. It takes 17 cups of broccoli to get the 1,200 milligrams a day. But at least we know there's another source. I mean, most of us aren't going to eat 17 cups of broccoli.
Unless you really like it.
Almonds. Almonds is another type of food that you can get. So for a 1/4 of a cup serving, which is an ounce, there's 60 milligrams of calcium. So again, not as much as 400, but a little bit adds up. Orange juice. If you are a juice drinker, and, you know, we do have to be careful how much juice we're getting. Exactly. Just make sure you're finding a juice that has the calcium that it says calcium fortified on there. And typically, that will have the same amount of calcium as a serving of milk or yogurt. And let's take a look to see. So this has 35%, so 350.
So a cup of orange juice is fortified with
calcium.
Same amount of calcium?
Roughly. This has about 350 milligrams,
as milk,
whereas the yogurt has 400.
But I mean as milk.
Milk,
so the orange juice has the same amount of calcium as a glass of milk.
Pretty much. Milk is going to have 300 milligrams, so this is a little bit more actually. And then you see over there beans. Pinto beans, again, has a little bit of calcium, similar to almonds. It has about 60 milligrams for a 1/2 cup serving. Another item which has come out for people who love pasta, this is a type of pasta that says that it's fortified with calcium, and I believe it's the same amount as a cup of milk. So you can test and see. 30%, so 300 milligrams
in a cup
for a 1/2 cup.
So you really got to start reading the labels.
You know, especially when you do want to reach out to those items beyond dairy foods. Sardines. So sardines or any, what's the other fish that has the bones in it that people eat? Not sardines, but it's in Caesar salad dressing. What am I thinking? Anchovies.
There you go.
Sardines and anchovies. When you eat those, you essentially eat them with the bone, so they're going to have calcium in it.
Oh, because of the bone.
Exactly.
Ah,
so those are some non-dairy types of foods, but it is important to look at the label because more and more foods are being fortified with calcium. Cereals are fortified with calcium.
Salmon?
Salmon, let's take a look, because there's no bones in there.
No.
But that's going to be more of our vitamin D, which we'll get into.
Because I was going to say, you could have a nice lunch with your pinto beans and your salmon and your nuts and broccoli, and that's getting like another little serving there.
Absolutely. You have a half a cup of pinto beans with a little bit of nuts. Say you throw in a cup of pasta and you throw in some broccoli with it. You're getting quite a bit of calcium there because all of that stuff adds up. It is important to note that our body cannot absorb just unlimited amounts of calcium at once. Our body typically only absorbs 300 to 500 milligrams at a time, and that's really important to know because if you are taking a calcium supplement, many of us are on a calcium supplement. It's really important that you're not taking that calcium supplement and then all of a sudden having a container of yogurt, because you're gonna be giving your body too much at one time, and we really want to make sure you're utilizing and our body's uptaking the most amount of calcium as it can. So it's important to really strategize a little bit if you're taking a calcium supplement.
What happens if you, like you said, you're taking a calcium supplement and you're eating all of the right foods? So what happens when you really do overdose? So
well, your body just doesn't.
Is it just going to dispel?
Well, your body just doesn't absorb it. Your body can only absorb so much at a time. So the unfortunate thing is you're not going to utilize it. And when we need 1,200, and for a lot of us that's difficult to do, you're essentially wasting it, because if you're taking 1,000 milligrams for lunch, you're probably not going to do that again for dinner. Right. So essentially, you're not going to end up getting enough because your body can't handle all that at once. So if you can spread it out throughout the day, research have said that our body absorbs it a little bit better later in the day. So if you're going to take a supplement or especially a dairy type of product, do it especially later in the day. Our body absorbs it, I guess, better.
That's what I heard too. I was just going to ask you that. Taking a calcium supplement, it should be taking in the evening, correct?
Well, later in the day, I guess our body absorbs it better. So if say you only take one once a day, you are better off taking it later in the day. And then again, figuring out, where am I getting the bulk of my calcium? Do I have a yogurt? Why don't I have that for breakfast or lunch? Because I'm going to take my calcium supplement later in the day.
Okay, my doctor, now we're going to talk about vitamin D. My doctor just put me on vitamin D recently. So why? What is the hype about vitamin D? Are we deficient? I mean, as we get older, do we become deficient?
Well, we know vitamin D comes from food. It's a very limited source. Unfortunately, most of the vitamin D comes from either if it's fortified milk or something like juice where it's fortified. Really, our vitamin D is coming from our fatty fish, similar to our omega-3, so our salmon, our sardines, our tuna. So many of us are not getting it in terms of diet. Where else do we get vitamin D? From the sun. Us in Massachusetts, we don't have that bright sunny weather, and we're not outside all throughout the year, so that makes us susceptible as well. On top of that, as we get older, our body just doesn't utilize that vitamin D from our skin as well as it did when we were in our, our 20s and 30s. So there's a lot of controversy right now, I have to say, because recently the Institute of Medicine came out and said that the estimated requirement for vitamin D is about 400 international units. And there is a lot of controversy on whether or not that is too low. The best way to know is you have to get tested. You have to get your blood drawn and, talk with your doctor to see where are you at, are you considered deficient or not. And, you know, every place tests it a little bit differently, so it's important to know if you're in that range for what they tested. And also, vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, so it stores in our body. So you may find that the doctor may start you off with a larger dose and then tapers you off, because it's not like a water-soluble vitamin where we take what we need and we excrete it every day. Our body stores it a little bit. So depending on where you're at, your doctor is going to put you on a different regimen than somebody else. So it's not necessarily the safest thing to just go out and go buy this vitamin D supplement until you really know where you're at.
I'm glad you said that, talking about being safe, only because I used to take calcium with vitamin D. And then I've always had that in the house, and I was always taking it. And then my doctor said, well, you need additional vitamin D. So I got the 400 of the vitamin D. Not thinking I'm taking calcium with vitamin D. So today, this morning, as a matter of fact, I was at the pharmacy, and I was like, I said to myself, wait a minute, I'm taking vitamin D, but the calcium. And so I talked to the pharmacist, and she immediately said, you really need to talk to your doctor about that. She said, because chances are the vitamin D that's in the calcium is probably too much compared to you taking a separate supplement.
That's where it's always, always, always important to tell your doctor everything that you're taking. In addition to the medications, they have to know all the different supplements, because you're right. Many people are taking calcium and they forget it's calcium with vitamin D. So if the doctor's then telling you to take vitamin D on top of it, and you're not telling them that you're already taking calcium with vitamin D, you know, you have to make sure that they know the full picture as well.
And it's so easy, just to, it slips your mind. You know, I started myself on the calcium with the vitamin D, you know, a couple of years ago, and it just was matter of fact that I'd take it. So it slipped my mind when he put me on the vitamin, you know, D edition.
Well, the other thing with the calcium supplement is they're not all the same. And so a lot of calcium supplements, if it's calcium carbonate, that requires more stomach acid. That requires that you have food so that your body releases that stomach acid to break it down more. A downfall with calcium carbonate is, as we get older, our body just naturally declines in the amount of acid that we make. So you may not be getting full use out of that supplement if your body requires that extra acid. The calcium that may be a better bet is called calcium citrate, because it doesn't require that additional acid. So if you're having problems with acid, especially as we get older, calcium citrate will ensure that it will break down and not just sit there because it's waiting for that extra acid. You also need to be cautious on any calcium supplement that's made out of bone meal or oyster shell. Really shouldn't be used, because there could be issues with lead in there. So it's important to really look exactly what it is that you're buying. The calcium citrate may be a little bit more expensive, but it's worth it if your body's actually utilizing it.
It's amazing that they would make a calcium with the oyster shell if it has bad properties.
I don't know how you know, how prevalent it is in the market, but it does exist. So it's just kind of one of those things that it's good to throw out there for people.
So especially for the seniors, calcium citrate seems to be the best type of calcium to
Absolutely.
take.
Absolutely.
All right. Preventing osteoporosis. We talked about that a little bit. And other than foods, are there any other ways?
Well,
and the exercise,
Yes, absolutely. The number one thing is to make sure you're also getting exercise. Having that weight-bearing activity is important. Is it great to do weights? Absolutely. But if you can at least get out and walk. The bike is great, but it's not weight-bearing. So if you can do something like simply walking, making sure you're doing balancing exercises, that's weight-bearing. And if you can, you know, do a little bit of weightlifting. You can just use simple things like cans. You know, and I have, again, resources for those people who are interested in very light and easy exercises, doing leg lifts, very simple things that will really help to keep those bones strong. keeping a healthy weight. It's just there with in terms of keeping our bones healthy. We need to make sure that we're at an adequate weight. As well as no excessive smoking, no excessive alcohol. Those will deplete our bones for sure.
Okay. So when it comes to exercise, you know, we think of doing some range of motion, you know, for their muscles.
Yep.
Just put a couple little small hand weights, or we could even add that can of beans.
Absolutely.
Right? So now I'm getting my calcium, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, that was great.
Yeah, that extra weight will help to, again, keep the bones, keep that that weight, you know, it's weight that's being applied to the bones, so it helps to keep the muscle strong and the bones. So you're kind of getting a 2-for-1 when you're lifting
a little
weights.
bonus there.
Exactly.
Good. Kim, this has just been so interesting this last 6 weeks,
I know.
talking about healthy aging, and I myself have learned so much.
Good.
I really want to thank you for coming.
Thank you, Tabitha.
And I want you to put together the next 6-week series.
We will.
So that'll be interesting to see. There's so much that foods do for us that I don't even think people are aware of.
Absolutely. If people have questions, they can feel free to, you know, write in if there's any specific topics, you know, with nutrition. There's so many things that we can talk about, and I'm sure there are people at home that may have questions, so we could maybe even do a Q&A session.
Sure.
If I get a lot of questions in, we could definitely come in and just
That's
maybe
a great idea.
answer some of those questions that people may have in the home that may not be, you know, one specific topic, but a variety of things.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, once again, thanks for coming,
Thank
Kim.
you.
I really enjoyed having you.
Thank you.
At the end of the show, you will see a phone number to contact if you have some questions for Kim or for myself. Also, if you'd like to get a copy of all of these series that we've done on healthy aging, you can also do that by contacting the ORC TV office. It was nice having you, and hope to see you again soon. Thanks.